It's time for Pot of the Dead. Join us!
Hello and welcome to Pot of the Dead, the internet horror film club that nobody asked for. I am your host, Nicholas Brown, and on today's episode, we'll be doing a Gaiden episode. With me today, I have Ben Vanweelden. Ben, would you like to introduce yourself to the listeners?
Yeah, my name is Ben Vanweelden, and I do numerous metal projects. One that I'm most known for right now is Venomous Echoes. And also do a doom project called Ceremonic Merriment, which is kind of funeral doom. Then I also do another project by myself called Wallow, which is kind of like Con 8 worship almost. Yeah, I do my best Aaron Dubin impression on that one for sure.
Nice.
And then, I just got numerous projects in the pipeline. So they're all in the works. None of it's been released, and it's just all waiting kind of. It's been a busy year.
Yeah.
But Venomous Echoes is my most known project right now.
Right on. Cool. And you also have a podcast that you run as well, correct?
Yeah, I do a horror-based podcast it's called Darkest Fears Podcast. Very small channel. Hasn't gotten a lot of attention, but we just do it for fun.
Yep, that's what we do as well. So for today, I had Ben come on the show because we are going to do a rocket fire history course on the history of metal and horror. And Ben and I have played in bands since we were wee young lads with each other throughout different scenes and stuff like that. And I thought, what better person to get a hold of to do this episode than Ben? So
thanks, man.
gonna kind of give you guys a real quick rundown of pre-metal history to get us up to speed on why these influences mattered when it came to the formation of metal.
Do you find yourself going, man, I wish I had more Pot of the Dead? Well, you're in luck. We have a Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/potofthedead666, you can find us there and get the full videos of our episodes with added content such as serious pasta for serious people. So again, that is patreon.com/potofthedead666.
So the history of metal the history of horror rather starts basically throughout all of our history, right? But when we're talking modern horror, it basically starts in 1818 with the publication of Frankenstein. From that point forward, you get Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Not too long after that, Jack the Ripper, the world's first celebrity killer, aka the world's first slasher, comes out. And then you just start getting, once films are starting to get made, obviously people are always enticed by dark themes. It's always been a thing throughout storytelling, through human history. And The House of the Devil is made in 1896 and is widely believed to be the first horror movie. So that's everything, just kind of from an art standpoint and European history. Obviously you can go back to the Renaissance and all that stuff and whatever, but we're talking about what's actually influential to the people that are making metal. So in the 30s, you get the Universal horror films. That changes everything. That right there is what basically anytime you talk to Alice Cooper or you talk to Tony Iommi or whatever, these are the people that are just oh man, I remember seeing these films when I was a kid and they scared the shit out of me. And these are the people that later go on to make music that just kind of takes that theming and makes it, metal.
Yeah. It's quite a dense history too.
Yes, it is.
If you think about it, because this spans it almost feels like eons.
Yes.
And I think like where I pull from a lot of influences, the more cosmic kind of horror.
Yep.
With H.P. Lovecraft. I've adapted a lot of his ideas into my own music. And I've loved horror movies since I was like a little kid. Even toddler. Like I remember, like my mom would just sit me in front of the TV and we would watch Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh yeah,
and like it's just like the first movie that I ever seen. Like, oh my god, this plant is eating people, but it's great.
Yeah, that was kind of like my introduction too. Was Beetlejuice? Like, oh, it's like this ghost demon guy, and they're killing. Like, there's this whole like area of dead people, and just weird, and just like that's what you get into.
But it's a genre of film that spans across many other genres as well.
Oh yes, yeah.
You have horror comedies, you have horror dramas, thrillers. It's also different, but it plays on the wonderful aspects of just being terrified.
Oh yeah, it's like the idea of mystery and the unknown, the fear of the dark, like realistically, right? Like the unknownness of like what's in the dark is what is like our most primal fear. So like the idea of something lurking out there is like, those are folk tales and passed down from like generation to generation, and being able to create something that then elicits that kind of reaction to people is why we ended up starting to get, once we got celluloid and everything, the Universal monster films where they took Frankenstein, Dracula with Bela Lugosi, Boris Karloff as Frankenstein, Lon Chaney as like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, like literally like the epicenter of, you still see this shit today. Like we're talking about almost 100 years ago, and these films like are still just like staples of like pop culture.
I mean, even the films like say like Nosferatu, one of the first horror films that came out, is still getting recognized to this day. And it's interesting how far people will take horror into like either extreme like extremities, or even if they will like even just take it to like a more psychological kind of thing. It's just a fascinating genre. I love it.
There's a different fear for everybody, and people watch horror for different reasons. Like there are very few horror films that actually scare me, right? But I love the craft, I love the special effects, I like the storytelling, like all of that kind of stuff. I've always been drawn to the macabre. Like I remember being very young and going down to the library in school and getting Edgar Allan Poe's collective works because we just read The Raven, and then just like piling into that. That was like my introduction into like, I don't even know what you'd call it, but just like dark storytelling. Like outside of this.
I always had a book that my mom used to read to me, even when I was a little kid. It was what was it called? Bony Legs. Yeah, it was called Bony Legs, about a witch who would eat children.
Okay.
Like it's so odd that parents would think that would be something okay to read to their kids, but then it's just so fascinating.
Well, I mean, that's what like the Grimm's fairy tales are. They're very dark stories that were told and everything, and we get them nowadays, like Cinderella and stuff. It's like, no, that shit's really fucked up in its original sense. You look back at a lot of things, that a lot of movies and stuff that you grew up on, and it's like, it's amazing how they even let me watch this. Oh yeah, it's like blows my mind when it's just like, I'll look at my parents and just be like, this is okay, and like my kids will come over to your house and like say something a little off, and you're like, how dare you? It's like, you let me fucking watch Seven when I was like 10. So don't even.
Right. And I always tell my mom, like, she's like, I don't know why you like that stuff. It's like, it's your fault.
Yeah, I didn't pick this life.
You literally introduced this stuff to me. Like, it's your fault.
Oh yeah.
But and I think like with horror specifically, one of its problems is that you have a lot of like shit to like
Yes.
riddle through. You have a lot of movies to get through before you can find that gem. And one of the movies that still like sticks out to me is Hereditary. That movie still like boggles my mind on how well it was made and how fucking unsettling some of the scenes are in that movie. And it's even simple things in that movie that really just like gets under your skin. Like even the scene, like one of the scenes in the movie is where the Annie is in like the room rummaging through like her grandmother's stuff and blah blah blah, and she gets a peek at her grandmother's ghost like in a corner, in a dark corner. It's not even like really noticeable. Correct. It's like almost like a contrast of like white against like really really dark, like a dark hole. It's so great. It's such a fantastic shot. That shot always sticks out in my head whenever I talk about that movie. That's like the first thing I think about. And it's awesome that now there's more modern directors that are willing to go into those kind of darker corners of the mind and try to present scary things to people in a really different way, in a really unsettling way. And then you have like the torture porn shit, and then you have like splatter movies, and it's all so different. And it's and if you do find a gem in any one of those any one of those subgenres of horror, it's bound to be awesome. It's awesome.
And that's where like horror and metal are so alike. I know metal fans, and like I'm a metal fan and you're a metal fan. We don't listen to the same fucking music. It's like in a broad sense, right? Like it's metal, but like metal has, you've got power metal, you've got black metal, you've got cavernous doom metal, you've got like all this, like all these things, and it's like it's all metal. Just like Beetlejuice is considered a horror film, so is Martyrs. These are not the same movie. These are not
at all
close to the same thing, but they're under the same umbrella. And that's where like the culture of it though is always interesting, because it's kind of like going to Baskin Robbins, all these different flavors, and you're just like, what's this, what's that? Because like once you get tired of one style, there's a plethora of other ones for you to like, well, like I've heard about this band or this movie or whatever, and try it out. Hour and a half later, you're like, you know what, I've got a new obsession. Or it's like, whatever, and on to the next thing, and that's what's great about it. And if there's two fan bases that are the most alike, and that is horror fans and metal metal fans. They're so alike. They act in the same way. They're as diehard as as horror fans, metal fans are. It's like a community almost. Yes, 100%. Metal definitely has a huge community. And horror, they have like different conventions that they have. They have these contests that you can win to like go hang out with Kane Hodder for a day, whatever. It's really cool because like we intertwine these two things together, and they match so well. And that's why I took the approach with Venomous Echoes to kind of present this horror story almost, and it's not finished yet, but it is like a huge concept, and it's delving into the more cosmic horror territories, but talking about my own issues and my own self-hatred, my own body dysmorphia issues. And I turned all these ideas into this fantastical, like fucked up horror story. Like, well, and more times than not, that's kind of where these stories come from. Is it's not as black and white as what you're seeing on the screen. I'll use Jordan Peele's Get Out as a prime example. Like, yes, there's like the obvious stuff, but like when he's talking about writing the script for it and stuff, there's so much personal stuff in there that, like, unless you know where he was mentally when writing this, it's not going to touch you, because like it's the idea of art is, you know, if I look at it and you look at it, we're going to see different things. Yeah. So, but
yeah, and going back to like Ari Aster and, you know, the movies that he's made so far, it's really weird when I watch interviews with him, because he laughs about all of his movies.
yeah.
And I'm like, dude, like, I would just like to be the fly on the wall to hang out with that guy one day and be like, can you tell me what the fuck you found funny in this movie?
Yeah. Him and Osgood Perkins is the same way, where he's just like, yeah, it was just a crazy thing. And it's like, this movie was just fucked up, man. Like, it was fucked up from top to bottom. Like, there was no levity in it. It's like, no, it's pretty funny.
like, you know, he was talking about, I saw this interview where he was talking about Midsummer, and he was like, yeah, I just find the movie hysterical. And I'm like, why? I'm like, dude, like, what is funny about this movie? Like, this girl literally gets forced to go to Sweden. She has all of her friends like brutally murdered in front of her, and her boyfriend is burned alive in front of her, and she's tripping balls on mushrooms and like, you know, like period
like God
blood
intended.
Drink. Like, what the like, what did you find funny about this movie? He's like, that's how all relationships are, you know. That's just like, relationships are just a disaster.
Well, and that's what I'm talking about, though, is like, because he, while writing it, knows all the secret jokes that led to these plot points and stuff like that. He's like, oh, that's wonderful. So when he watches the film, he's like, that was funny when I thought that thing or whatever. And it's just like, everyone else is just seeing people's faces get smashed.
Like, yeah. And I'm like, you know, like, as that movie goes on, it just gets more and more bleak as it goes. And I'm just like,
but it's sunny.
And
it can't be bleak.
And I keep thinking back to that interview. I'm like, what did he find funny? I mean, in Beau is Afraid, I can maybe understand, because there's some really hilarious parts in that movie, but it's also a complete fucking disaster. Like, the whole thing is like an anxiety, like an anxious person's nightmare.
Yeah. It'd be really funny if he's like, you know, you're like talking to him. It's like, what's the funniest thing that you've made? And he's like, oh, the dinner scene in Hereditary. I'd be like, this guy's fucking lying. He's just lying.
Or like the seance scene. You know? It's like,
fuck you, Ari.
He's a great guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really look forward to more movies that he makes, because I think like he's one of the best in the game right now. And I'm not a huge fan of Peele, but you know, a lot of people are, and that's fine.
I like Get Out. That's like the one that I do like.
See, for me, I couldn't get into it. I couldn't, like, you know, find the wow factor in it. And and the same thing with Us. I thought that movie was just blatantly funny, and I didn't find anything scary about it. Maybe that was his intention. I don't know.
Correct.
And Nope was just kind of like an homage to like Spielberg, or you know.
I think he kind of said that about that film. You got to watch out, though. One of our hosts, Natasha, is a huge Jordan Peele fan, so she might be coming for you now.
I don't care. I don't care. I just haven't found anything that really.
No, I get it.
Sticks out at me with him. Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, there's a lot of stuff that like I'll say like, oh, I love this for this. I love this thing for the same reason I hate this other thing.
Yeah.
It's because this is like the comparison I always make is like Mark Wahlberg and Ryan Reynolds. And it's because it's like, I like Ryan Reynolds because he does play the same guy in everything. But I like that guy. I like that guy. But Mark Wahlberg does the same fucking thing. But I hate that guy. It's just like, I like him.
You see, with me though, I'm a fan of Marky Mark. I like what he does. He may play this. The only character that strayed away from the normal shit that he does was when he played in The Departed. Yeah, because he had that absolutely horrendous and stupid Boston accent. Yeah, and it was funny. Yes, his character was hysterical. Yes, but yeah, Marky Mark, like the fighter, like. That movie is so fucking good. I don't care what anybody says. They can bitch and complain about Marky Mark all they want, but that movie was fucking good.
All right, let's try to get back on track. So
I'm good at that.
No, like this is what I expected from it. So we'll kind of fast forward. You know, we're doing the Universal Monster stuff. We're in the pre-rock era. This rock and roll hasn't started yet or anything. You're starting to get gothic kind of imagery though, from like Dracula. The Wolfman comes out in the 40s. And this is something I found very interesting. In the 50s, teen culture is a thing. Like this is the first time that teen culture has existed. And it's from that you start getting your kind of like, not grindhouse films, but your B-schlocky drive-in films and everything. You start getting Godzilla comes out in like 1954. The Hammer films come out in the late 50s, like 57 you got Curse of Frankenstein, 58 Dracula, 59 The Mummy, and then in 1956 Screaming Jay Hawkins puts out I Put a Spell on You. And that's kind of where we start. Because that's like one of the first popular
spooky song.
Yeah, it's the first popular spooky song. And like it fucking freaked people out. You've got this guy like dressed up like a kind of like a witch doctor and like being fucking crazy and everything. TV, like people are getting this broadcast into their house because he's doing live performances on shows, and it's like freaking people out. But that's how people get influenced to make things later. They see that at a young age. They go, that's fucking cool. I want to do that when I grow up. Yeah. So that right there. And then like when you've got the Beatles in the 60s, those two things, when like that starts happening and starts broadcasting everywhere, that's where you start getting young, impressionable people going, I want to do that. I want to take this and I want to take that and I'm going to smash it together and I'm going to make something wholly my own. So, but yeah, like
yeah, and you know, rightfully so, because you got that right, because that was like one of the first spooky songs that came out, and you know, it was a smash hit. Everybody loved it. I even still listen to it to this day. Like it's just one of those. Even if you're like watching like Hocus Pocus for shits and giggles.
That's what I was just going to say.
You know,
it's so
Bette
prominent.
Midler does her own little rendition of it in the movie.
Yep.
You know, I don't care what anybody says. I absolutely adore those like childhood like Halloween movies.
Oh yeah,
I love them. Like, you know.
Well, we don't get those anymore, really.
No, and you know, it's like. It just feels like it's almost like a missed opportunity, because they really should be having that kind of thing nowadays. And unfortunately, what do we get? We get a bunch of like Pixar bullshit.
If you'd like to be part of our horror film club, make sure to follow us at Instagram, Threads, and Facebook at Pod of the Dead. All of our episodes can be found at podofthedeadorelse.com or wherever you stream music and podcasts. If you have movie recommendations or questions for us, email us at podofthedead666@gmail.com. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review. Or else.
But I think that's why movies like Coraline and Paranorman were so wildly popular and have gotten this cult following, because that's about like the only show in town when those were coming out. Yeah. Like, you know, when we were kids, and we'll get to that point, you had stuff like Tim Burton and shit putting things out, and you had like this weird ooky spooky stuff that was like for everybody. It wasn't necessarily for adults. It wasn't necessarily for kids. It just was, you know? Yeah.
And it's like, it almost seemed like when, you know, we were kids, like, you know, they came out with something like that every year.
Yeah.
And, you know, we had something to look forward to, like every Halloween, or, you know, now we just have those movies on repeat.
Yep. or just a sequel made 30 years later or whatever, you know?
You know, I haven't seen it yet, and I'm not going to really talk about it.
No,
but
I have seen it.
Yeah, and it was. I'm gonna say it was 30 years too late.
Well,
they really should have done it sooner, and it should have been done. You know, like I said, I haven't seen it, so I don't know how tasteful it is or whatever.
The only thing that I have to say about it is I always just tell people, take take your own eyes and watch it, right? My thing about it is it's the only sequel that I didn't want the original creators to have anything to do with, because Tim Burton hasn't made a film that I've been interested in since Sleepy Hollow.
Very long time.
So I knew that this wasn't going to be made for me and everything. My kids loved it and everything, and it was a passable big budget film, and it's doing well. Good on them, you know. But yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we're just old and curmudgeon.
That's it. God damn it! Where's my Beetlejuice? I didn't vote for this Beetlejuice.
Yeah, what happened to my Beetlejuice too? God damn it!
I thought he was supposed to be on the beach. But
no, it's true though. Like, you know, it's a generational thing, and I'll probably wind up seeing it. For me, honestly, I'll probably wait until it streams until I go see it.
Yeah.
You know, there are some movies this month or next month that I'm like hesitant to see, but you know, like Terrifier 3.
Yeah.
I know everybody's going to be shitting a brick over it. I don't know what I'm going to be expecting out of that one. I'm really not.
I'm not crazy. Like we did an episode on Terrifier 2 not too long ago because we had listeners suggest it and everything. My sister fucking hates gore films, so that was a blast. But for me, I just look at the Terrifier films as a really good special effects resume. I don't find them to be like entertaining films. It's like, oh, that's neat. That's cool. But I also was in my very formative, like, right out of high school years, was like torture porn. Like, I saw Hostel, I saw, you know, all that shit that was coming out, you know. Yeah. So this is nothing new to me.
No. And you know, I love the first one. The first one is so good. Like, it's just bare bones, in your face, just straight up like a homage to 1980 slashers.
Yeah.
Then they went with 2, and they upped the gore and everything, which was great, but the story was ridiculous.
Yeah, and way too long.
Way too long. Like, that movie had no business being 2.5 hours long whatsoever. And maybe Damien didn't learn from that, because I hear 3 is going to be like 2 hours long.
Oh, I thought I heard it was like 145 or something.
I thought it was. I read I read somewhere it's going to be 2, but I could be wrong. But you know, it's still pushing it.
That's fucking long.
Like, a slasher is a good hour and 30. You know, that's all you need.
Goddamn right.
Like, you don't need all this like stupid fantastical storytelling in it.
No.
Do you need a woman with angel wings and a magical sword? No. All I cared about was, you know, how Art killed people and how funny he was.
Yeah, that's all. I mean, realistically, at the end of the day, I think that's why people buy the T-shirt, right? Like, it's just like, oh, it was so fucked up when he did this thing, and it was so funny when he wore the glasses, and that's it. Like,
I will say the bedroom scene in 2, though, is absolutely the best version of slapstick I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, really?
And it's so slapstick, it's not even funny. Like, it's funny, but you know,
I was gonna say, like, you kind of contradicted yourself. It's so funny, it's not funny.
When he leaves the room, and you're like, okay, he's done, whatever. And then he comes back in with the salt and just like pours it all over and just rubs it in and everything. I'm just like, this is so funny. Like, it shouldn't be funny, but this is so funny.
Well, it's just the absurdity. Like,
exactly.
It's not trying to play itself as serious. Like, it's just like, okay, I get it. Like, if like that's all you can do in those films. It's just like, oh, okay, he's ripped out someone's eye and now he's pretending it's his and he's doing it. It's like, anybody to see that and be like, oh, it's so scary. I can understand it being stomach churning and stuff like that. No, I get that, but like,
when I watch it, I see, you know, what was his name? He was a silent film actor and he did a lot of slapstick. I can't remember his name.
You're talking about Groucho Marx?
Yeah, that's a good example.
Okay.
But fucking the guy who played in The Dictator, what was his name again?
Oh fuck, man. I'm throwing my cred card out the window.
Why am I like why am I like missing on this? Like,
I can remember who played him in his movie was Robert Downey Jr. Chaplin.
Yeah, Charlie Chaplin.
Chaplin. That's it.
Yeah, I mean that's what I see when I see art.
Yeah.
Like it just reminds me of like the old school slapstick movies. Like, oh, I tripped over this and I'm gonna embellish it. It's like, or hey, I got this horn and I'm gonna beep it like 300 times at you and be really annoying. It's just funny.
Yeah, it's got that Three Stooges quality to it, which. For sure. I mean, you can draw a line from the Three Stooges literally to Evil Dead. Like, that is Sam Raimi's number one influence. That's why his movies are the way they are. But, so bringing us up into the 60s, that's where we get basically psychos and psychedelics. So we get literally Psycho comes out in 1960. Hitchcock completely flips the script on everything. Like, ruins people's lives. Like, basically with this film. Like, you would have thought like that he had just murdered a bunch of people by putting this film out. It was literally like the first big talked about horror film. And yeah, and it's still to this day we get Bates Motel and all this stuff,
Yeah, and big thanks to the violins in that movie and the score. Yeah. I think that's what really does it for me. Mm-hmm. Is because when you hear the violins in the shower scene, you know exactly what you're watching and what we're talking about.
It builds such an atmosphere for it.
Exactly, and it's nothing more iconic than that.
Yeah.
When you think of horror, you think of
Yep.
Like, that, and that's like instantly just like pops into your head.
You don't even have to have seen that movie and you know what they're talking about.
And it. Yeah, you know it. Like, people may say like, oh, I don't like that movie that much. Like, it doesn't matter if you don't like it that much. It was 100% one of the most iconic movies to hit the screen.
Yeah, without that, the influence isn't passed down the food chain. And that doesn't mean you have to like it, but it's, I might not like the Rolling Stones, but I got to give credit where credit's due, right? Like, it is what it is. So yeah, like you've got Psycho comes out, the film Black Sabbath comes out in 1963. And then
yes, I love that movie. It's so good.
That's actually where later down the road they get their name from, because they saw people lining up down the road to be scared, and they said, man, the name of that movie is pretty fucking rad, and if people are lining up around the fucking block to see this, maybe we'll just cop that, because their name was Earth prior to that.
Yeah.
It's just like, but then
imagine what would have happened if they would have kept that name, and then the band Earth today would be like, well, we have to call our show something else.
But yeah, like that comes out, then Vietnam, the US gets involved in that in 1965, and from that point on, I didn't really realize this until I started doing research for this. Vietnam's like super important with how everything goes after that, because a couple years after that you get Night of the Living Dead, which is a social commentary on just like how civilization, when it breaks down, like because the zombies are there, yeah, but that's not the point of the movie, no. Like that's what gets people there. It's the breakdown of society. And
I wonder, like, if in those days when George Romero and everybody, when they were making that movie, if they really thought the writing in that movie was going to be as popular as it is today.
Yeah, like
that whole like spiel about when there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth, and all that stuff is such an iconic line.
It's such a good line.
And it's remembered for decades and decades and decades, and everybody remembers that scene when he's talking about it. And it just would have been amazing to be alive during that time.
Oh yeah,
just to see more interviews of George Romero talking about it, and then like how big that movie got. Like, that movie,
imagine being in the drive-ins in Pennsylvania in the late 60s, and that's what you come across. Like, that's insane, because they're all shot in Pittsburgh. Like, that's just where he's from, and that's what he did. And it just kind of blows my mind. So it's like, you've got that, which, like, right out the gate. So, like, when horror... this is what always like drives me nuts when people talk about like A24 films and refers to them as like, well, it's elevated horror. Like other stuff is like fucking like knuckle dragging. It's like Psycho, Night of the Living Dead. They're all like if that's elevated horror, that's been around. Like it's not new.
I'm sorry, but if anybody says the words elevated and horror together, I just tell them to shut the fuck up.
I know
it's not a real thing.
It's the same idea.
Just horror.
It's the same idea as like in the 90s, really good horror films were just called thrillers. Because we can't give credit to horror because horror is bottom denominator. That's what it is. So
but yeah, anybody that says like elevated horror these days, I'm just like, I don't know what you're talking about because it's just horror. Like, it's just a different kind of horror.
It's dramatic. It's more focused on
basically drama.
Yeah.
It's more drama than anything. And like these people who go and like, oh, this is branded as a horror movie. Now I'm going to go see this movie. And then they're like, I was really disappointed by that movie. Probably because you went into it expecting a horror movie.
Oh yeah. well, prime example is like the second wave of people that went and saw Longlegs. And like, I don't want to give any spoilers away or anything like that.
I've seen it.
I'm just saying to the listeners. But like, it's a horror film. But like, when people are saying it's the scariest thing they've ever seen, and then that gets the taglines, people expect a certain thing, and it's like no,
because I looked at it more as a true crime.
Yeah, 100%.
And it had horror elements in it, but it was more of a true crime kind of deal, like a whodunit thing. But if I had to compare any movie to that one, would be Silence of the Lambs.
Oh yeah.
And when I started telling people that, I was like, yeah, it reminds me a lot of Silence of the Lambs. They're like, I'm not getting that vibe. I'm like, well, you have to go see it.
The two films that I said, and one is another Osgood Perkins film, I was like, it's Silence of the Lambs meets The Black Coat's Daughter. It just is that. Yeah, and it's like because he has a specific vibe that he builds. Like his atmosphere is very specific. Like all three of his films that I've seen all just kind of have this like weight on them.
And you see, I saw Black Coat's Daughter and I didn't really care for it.
Oh, really?
But then I saw Longlegs, and I didn't make the correlation that it was the same director, and I was just like, and when I went to go see it, I was just like, fuck, man, this is a ride. Like, this is a wild fucking ride from the beginning. I love the music in it, with T-Rex and everything.
Yeah.
Nicolas Cage's performance in that movie, I think, is his shining moment.
Oh yeah,
in horror, because he's done so many different movies and acted absolutely insane in most of them, but this one took it to a different place.
This is the first time that he's been crazy, and it was like, this motherfucker is crazy.
It's really unsettling.
Yes, it's very like I wouldn't want to be in the room with that person.
Yeah, it was really unsettling, especially like I hate to give spoilers, but
we could talk about it off air. We can talk about it off air because we're actually going to cover it later this year. But yeah, the movie's fucking great. If you haven't seen it, check it out. But
it's really good.
Yeah, and so we got Night of the Living Dead. Rosemary's Baby comes out the same fucking year, which now, and like a lot of people think of like The Exorcist as being like the first like religious horror and all this stuff, and there's been religious horrors, but like Rosemary's Baby is like the first big like oh fuck moment. Like
not even that though. Like Mark of the Devil, I think that was prior to Rosemary's Baby, and also I know it's prior to Exorcist.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah.
Mark of the Devil is a good one.
I'm just talking about that, like the broadscape of like everybody. It was like, oh my god, you have to see this, like that wide-reaching influence of like people just being like, I can't believe that they made this film. Like that whole like clutching your pearls thing, and that's so like going back to like why we're talking about this horror and metal. That's the same fucking thing. It's like, I can't believe people listen to this music. I can't believe that it's the same idea. It's this like outrage at something that you don't understand or you don't like.
Yeah. And I think like to kind of shed better light on it, my view of it is that I just love like fantastical stories. I love huge and dense, stories. And I think horror like gives you that in spades. And to take metal, which is a dense, and I mean a dense form of music, you also have to take where your influences are, which for me was always horror movies. So I have to like express my feelings and my troubles and my bullshit in some sort of horrific fashion.
Yeah, you put it through the lens of what you know.
Because I'm sorry, but anybody that deals with like anxiety disorders and anybody that deals with eating disorders, like body dysmorphia, and it's not a happy existence.
No, it is not.
So I figured there's no better way than to express that kind of stuff than to just form it into a horror story.
Well, yeah, like a lot of horror story, like just no matter what media it is, whether it's literary, film, music, whatever, right? It's 9 times out of 10, it's more than what's in front of you. There is something that drove this person to basically use this medium as their screen, to like get out what they needed to. And obviously not all films and not all books are like that, like you do have like just basic splatter films. They're like, let's just see how many guts we can get on film.
And, and you have bands like that too.
Yeah.
Like, you have Cannibal Corpse, who literally just make splatter movies in audio form. That's
100%. That's all it is.
Yeah, and they have no literal like. I don't believe in any of this shit. They even will tell you I don't believe in any of this shit. I just write it for fun.
Well, yeah, even like back in the 80s, like when Slayer comes out and stuff, and like everyone's like, oh, so scary, so evil, blah blah blah. It's like Tom, the bassist, is like a Catholic, and he's like, yeah, we write all this stuff about it. And he's like, I don't fucking care. I don't believe in this shit.
Well, yeah, I even saw like an old video of Tom talking about like, they're like, well, what are your like they asked him, what are your influences? And he's like, shit, Cream. I loved the Zombies, just a lot of oldies music.
Yeah.
And they're like, where does that fit in with what you play now? He's like, it doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be 1-to-1. Like that's the thing is like you've got pop stars and stuff that are huge into metal, and it's like they fucking write pop music. Like it doesn't have to be 1-to-1, but the influence is just like, that I want to make. Okay, this is what it comes down to. I remember when I ingested said media and it made me feel this way. I want to make something that makes others feel that way. That's it. Like that's all it is about creating something, like being influenced by something and wanting to then create something because you're influenced. It's because you want to have that same response to your creation.
Yeah. And, I love, bands that just do it for the shits and giggles. Yeah. And, I love bands that kind of take it a little more seriously. And, I obviously take what I do seriously because it's basically me in a wrapped up, fucked up form. That's it. But, there are bands out there like, like I said, Cannibal Corpse or Impetigo or whatever. Yeah. They just did it just for, fun. They just did it for shock value, and that's it.
100%.
And that's fine. It's all about whatever makes the musician feel better, I think. Oh, yeah. And it's not about, I actually got into a conversation about this with somebody about Opeth, and they're like, oh, yeah, they got growls now, and they're back, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, they've never left. I was like, they've always been here. You're just shallow in what you like in your music, which is fine. I understand.
I don't like this thing. Okay, that doesn't mean that they're doing anything bad. It just means they're not writing this album for you.
Right. That's all it is. Exactly. And I had to tell them, I was like, people forget that you're not in the band.
Correct.
Like, you are just somebody that listens to it. Mm-hmm. These people write music to make themselves feel better. That's it. It's not about the fans. It's about what makes them happy and what they enjoy playing.
And that's what's really interesting about like metal and horror as a whole is like they have such an indie level of fan base. Like they're like, not every film has to be Saw, and not every metal band has to be Ghost, right? And I mean the jury's out on Ghost being a metal band. I just say they're metal. It's an easier battle to fight.
Dude, I'm gonna just say they owe Blue Oyster Cult a lot of royalties.
100%. I'm not.
Like they're just a hard rock band to me, and and that's fine. Well, I'm not really a huge fan of them, but
like I appreciate their first couple albums and stuff. They're all right, but like at the end of the day, that's gonna get somebody into other stuff. Like that's gonna be Baby's first metal band or whatever.
Yeah, I can understand that.
And fucking,
for sure.
And Saw's gonna be Baby's first horror film. Like that, you need that. But then,
man, if Saw is somebody's first horror film, fuck.
Well, I mean, like think about it, because like Saw is essentially this era's Friday the 13th. They have about the same amount of fucking films.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. No, yeah. And I remember when I first saw that movie, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to think about this movie. This movie looks ridiculous. And we went and saw it, and just like my friend Mike, who's also on our podcast, he does that with me. It's just like that ending when it hit.
Yeah,
everybody was like, "What the fuck?"
Like, stands up, shuts happened? The door.
Like, what just happened? Like, nobody expected him to be alive. Like,
I was just really confused because I thought it was a sequel to The Princess Bride. So I was like, this isn't the same. Where's Andre the Giant at?
Fucking love Carrie Elwes though. I love him.
Oh yeah, fucking great.
He's such a bumbling idiot in that movie, and it's so great.
Oh yeah. So post Rosemary's Baby, we have what is widely considered, and obviously there's probably people that did it before and everything, but what I like to consider the invention of shock rock with Alice Cooper in 1969. Yep. So that's where you start getting like your big bombastic theatrics and the vaudevillian horror kind of mixed in there. You've got live decapitations on stage, and that is insane to think that that's happening in the same year that the moon landing happened.
Yeah, and and that's actually kind of going back to my mom always giving me shit about horror. She was a huge Alice Cooper fan. Like, she would always talk about, I saw Alice Cooper. I'm like, and you wonder why.
Yeah.
And you wonder why.
It's fucking crazy.
But yeah, Alice Cooper, great musician. I love what he does. Even still today, I love what he does because, he took like the horror fanaticism, and he took like the shock of horror and put it into his own stage show, and I think that's just amazing. He turned like his whole like stage show into just like this one gigantic play. And
without Alice Cooper, there is no Kiss, there is no Rob Zombie, there is no Marilyn Manson, there is no Gwar. Like that whole idea of like the stage show, and I'm not saying that someone else wouldn't have done it, but like as we know it, that's where it kind of starts.
That's where it started.
Yeah, like
you like black metal, where they got all their stage antics and everything.
Yep.
That all just goes back to one man, and that was Alice Cooper. And, he started doing that shit, and he took it to extremes.
Oh yeah, the chicken incident, and I think it was Detroit or whatever. He didn't know chickens couldn't fly.
Exactly, and like depicting himself getting electrocuted and like all this other shit, and it's nuts.
Yeah.
But yeah, Alice Cooper rules. I love him.
But like right after that, the next year, obviously they existed prior, but their first album comes out in 1970. The invention, as most would suggest, Black Sabbath's self-titled album, Black Sabbath, comes out and is kind of panned on its reviews and everything, but that's how most things go when they first come out, because they just wanted to do what they wanted to do. And being fueled by the times of Vietnam and horror films and the occult and stuff like that, they started writing songs about things that interested them. And with that marriage, you start getting that kind of tie into horror, and now you've got like doom metal, which is like the slow, bluesy, kind of distorted, thick kind of tones and stuff like that. And then we're just fucking off to the races. 1970, metal has entered the chat. Horror is right there with it, and go. And all parents hate both of them.
Yeah, and you know, you can talk to any band, and I mean any band, and they will probably always tell you that there is at least some influence of Black Sabbath in their music. Like 100%. Even with me, there's influence of Black Sabbath in my music. You know, with the slower doomy parts, and you know, just the atmosphere alone of just hearing
just the use of the tritone, like it's
like whoa. Like,
yeah, it's,
you know, it changes everything.
It's literally a 3-note progression that way back in the day it was illegal to play because they believed that it would summon devils. And it's because it sounds so nefarious, you know, just dun, dun, dun. That's it. That's all we need for this riff.
Yeah.
Chiming. They got it all. The chiming of the bell, the thunder. Like, it's just there. This is metal.
I agree. Yeah, it's so amazing. Like, you know, we talk about like Night of Living Dead and the influence that it has had over so many years. But, you know, Black Sabbath did the same thing.
Yeah.
They cemented this sound, and you know, they didn't waver from it too much, but you know, they invented this sound, and then years later, like this whole subgenre just like appeared.
Oh yeah.
And now they're like one of the most influential bands of all time in metal.
I would say currently, because like it was always widely remarked that like the Beatles were because they quote unquote invented rock and roll, which I don't, but you know what people say. But like nowadays, I don't think that people that are playing music that they would be influenced by the Beatles even give a shit about that. People though that are playing metal give a shit about the lineage and stuff like that, and they go back and listen, or maybe they were introduced to, you know, Masters of Reality, or you know, Number 4, you know, like maybe these are the albums that they were fucking introduced to. Paranoid was one of my first metal albums that I'd ever heard. That in 1984 by Van Halen.
yeah
like
yeah,
that
Paranoid.
Was
that was my first you know, like Black Sabbath record I ever got. And I remember like listening through that album like the first time, and then, you know, you get to like kind of the space rock kind of stuff.
Yep.
And you're like, what range you know these guys had? Like it's astounding. And you know, you hear about, you know, the disabilities of, you know, the guitar player, fucking Tony Iommi. You know, the disabilities that he had with his hands and everything, and it's just like these guys made something that is historical, and they did it just with almost nothing.
Yeah,
like just almost nothing.
Just
like,
literally sun amps. We got to tune lower because our guitarist is missing a tip of his finger, so we need to tune lower so the tension's easier to play. Oh, look at this. It just sounds heavier. Oh, we're going to play really fucking loud, so now it's distorted as fuck. And we've got fucking Ozzy over here just belting out about what is this that stands before me. Just it fucking works. Oh no! Like it just that right off the rip on the self-titled album is just like horror incarnate. Like
Iron Man.
Yeah.
You know, even though we've heard that song millions and millions and millions of times, just that opening has to be like the most sour note in pop history. And like you hear it and it's not, of course, it wouldn't be considered a pop song, but it is popular. But yeah, it's the most sour note in pop history. And then you have that weird like gargly voice coming. Like, what is going on? I love it. Yeah, it's a fantastic band, and it just one of those bands that just spans over ages and ages and ages. Yeah, I think even like if I ever have children, my children will know about that band. Oh yeah, their children will know about that band for years and years to come.
It literally is a band that the fans will never let die. Like that is it will always be there.
Yeah, and they had a live performance of them like back in the room together for like One Last Thing or whatever. And man, fucking Tony's tone never ever falters. Like his tone is nasty, and it's so good.
And it's one of those things where, in a real sense, like with him and stuff, it's very simple. It's an SG into a Sun. Cranked. That's it. It's like, there we go.
Well, nowadays he uses like Laney's and stuff.
Yes, that's right.
I saw that video of them getting back together and just like jamming, and they were playing Sweet Leaf, and I'm like, holy fuck. I was like, Tony's tone is fucking out of control.
Yeah, it's fucking nuts. So you got Black Sabbath, now we got metal, and then from here on out, shit gets gnarly. And I'm just going to start listing some shit. And when you want to point something out that you want to talk about, go right ahead. 1970, The Wizard of Gore comes out.
Yes! Yes! I love it. I love that goddamn movie so much. It's so much fun. And, I remember when I first saw it.
That's Herschel Gordon Lewis, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. I remember when I first saw it, I was just like, this movie's fucking wacky. I was like, this nuts. It's out of control. And, so much blood and so much gore everywhere. And, to think how old that movie is.
That's what I'm saying. Like 1970. Like, the fuck?
Yeah. And like the things that they were doing in that movie, I was like, man, this had to have been made in a sewer.
Yeah.
Like
and that's like, we're talking, the MPAA has not ruined movies yet or anything. Like, we're just talking about
there's no censorship.
Yeah, this dude just making films and just driving around to drive-ins and grindhouse theaters and just being like, hey, you guys want to show this film? And fucking just people just getting ripped to shreds like on cinema. Just like, what the fuck is going on with the reddest paint blood ever?
Yep. The good old Italian red paint. Everywhere.
Oh yeah. Couple years later in 72, Last House on the Left comes out.
Love it. Yeah, I love it. Wes Craven.
Yep, Wes Craven's first post-porno film. So he was a porn director previously. Decides, this horror thing, maybe I'll do that.
Which, to me, I wouldn't even consider a horror movie. I would consider it more, like one of those weirdo exploitation movies.
100%, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it is a trigger warning for anybody. It is a rape revenge film. Like that is that is what it is. And that's where like horror is up to the person. That's going to be a horrifying movie to one person. It's not going to the next person. But as you're saying.
It was one of those first like, mainstream kind of exploitation movies. Yeah. I don't know how it picked up so much traction that it did, but it really did. And it's an okay movie. It's not one of my favorites.
No.
It still like has that super unsettling feeling that it gives you, during those rape scenes and everything.
It's one of those movies, like another one that's about to come up in 2 years, that it just feels dirty. It feels wet and greasy and gross.
Yeah.
So that's 72. 73, everybody has officially lost their fucking mind. The Exorcist comes out.
Yep.
And the devil has entered the chat hardcore.
Yeah. And you know what, a fantastic movie. You know, I still love it to this day. I skip the second one always because it's not a sequel.
And then the third one.
The third one
is the best one in my opinion.
My favorite.
Yeah.
Yes, it's the best one because fucking Brad Dourif's performance in that movie is absolutely astounding.
Yeah.
His monologue that he does in that movie is so iconic. I don't care if anybody hasn't even heard it. Yeah. The moment that you hear that monologue in that movie, you're like, this man's about ready to break out of his own skin. Like, it's gnarly.
Yeah, it's fucking crazy. And to think that came out in the, like, well, the second one was the the third one was the mid 80s, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that was all because, you know, they didn't think Heretic was a good sequel. Yeah. They didn't think it was a good sequel at all. So they figured, you know, fuck the studios. I'm going to just, you know, make my own movie, and I'm going to make it the actual sequel to the actual movie. Yeah. Because the studios raped the Heretic movie. It was awful.
Rewrites and re-edits.
Terrible.
And rewrites. Yeah.
It was one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. And I still hold it up as one of the worst movies ever.
Oh, damn.
Like, I hate it. I hate it so much. And, you know, the fact that it actually pissed off the original author so much that he was like, hey, guys, we need to make a better movie than that. Yeah. Like,
I know there's better material here.
Yeah.
So then that's 73. 74 is the film that I'm talking about. Literally to this day, the most uncomfortable, and not gross of like the amount of gore, just the feeling of it. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre comes out in 74.
And you know what, man? I have a lot to talk about this movie. And starting off is a score. Yes. The score in that movie is what got me into experimental music. Because when you hear that opening scene, like when they're doing the credits and everything, and you just hear noise, and you just hear, like, you know, and the rustling around and like all this other stuff, and that really took me down a rabbit hole of experimenting with noise music. I give my credit to that movie for any noise that I've made in my career. You know, it's one of the best scores in horror history. Oh yeah. Yeah, next to like Goblins, like Suspiria score and everything, which is more traditional, but correct. That score is 100% the most unsettling score I've ever heard in a movie.
And it's one of those things too where a lot of people, if you haven't watched the Texas Chainsaw Massacre in a while, you may not even realize that there is a score because it blends in to the film. It is the film. It's one of those things where there are movies where the score is so great, and there are other ones that the movie's good, but the score is so bad it takes you out of it. The number one film that comes to mind with that is Alexander Aja's remake of The Hills Have Eyes. It's a fucking dope movie, but then it's got to be like bah, 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 at scenes, and I'm just like, what the fuck are we doing here, man?
I'm dying. Oh, that's so good.
But it's one of those things, like, you know, like when it fits perfectly, it fits perfectly. Like that's I remember watching The Black Coat's Daughter for the podcast and everything. It was the first time that I'd seen it, and I was like obsessed with the soundtrack from it because it was so ominous. It was so just atmospheric, and it just my go-to phrasing is I just wanted to roll around in it. It was so fucking good. And like that's kind of like how you feel with like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's just like it's so fucking like imposing.
And another one that we've already talked about, but another one that really like kills me with the score is Midsommar. Like Ari has a knack for a really good score in a movie, and he knows exactly what needs to be played to elevate each scene. And the fucking opening scene to Midsommar, when she finds out that her parents are dead and her sister's dead, and like the build up of the orchestral sound in that scene just makes your skin crawl.
Yeah.
And you can just hear her just kind of crying very faintly, and like it just keeps building and building and building, and it's just like it's almost like being sucked into a black hole.
Yeah.
And yeah, that scene alone is why I love that movie. Yeah. Because of the music. And music correlates with horror so well, because you can experiment different sounds in horror than you would, like, say, in a comedy, or you would say in a love story. Love stories are pretty predictable. Like, exactly when the sad part's going to be, you know what they're going to play during that part, and exactly what's going to happen. In a love movie, they're going to kiss, and there's going to be like some really happy, sad, almost piano playing.
Yep.
Fucking whatever. It's predictable. But in horror, it is so unpredictable.
Well, that's kind of the point of it. Like, in both ways, it's that unexpectedness. That's it builds the tension. Because if if like that, the idea of like comedy and romance films and stuff like that, the audience is not looking to be shocked, or to like, what they're looking for is levity or something to comfort them, or make their insides feel all nice and warm and gushy and stuff like that. But horror fans want those insides outside now. And the music, like, so much is like done where like you don't actually, like, Texas Chainsaw Massacre has damn near no fucking blood in that film whatsoever. And it's still one of the grossest films. Because
they say it's one of the grossest. Yeah, they say it's like one of the scariest movies and one of the grossest movies of all time. But there's barely any blood in it. A lot of the shock factor comes from like the skin-made lamps and the skull chair and the throne and blah blah blah, and just the atmosphere of the movie alone just feels 100% dirty. It
100% feels like it's 110 degrees in Texas, and everyone's just sweating to death. And that's basically what they did. That's how they fucking made that movie.
And it just adds to the tension throughout the whole movie. Yeah. And if there was a perfect movie in a perfect world, I would give Texas Chainsaw Massacre its dues on that one.
Oh, 100%. It does exactly what it's intending to do.
And it's not even just that, though. It's just that it was so well executed and so well presented in a way that made people lose their fucking minds when they first saw it. And then it continues to fuck with us for years to come.
Well, and like how it's presented is like almost as if it actually happened. It opens up as, an investigative kind of report kind of thing, and just like,
what fucks me up about that movie, though, is that, directed by Tobe Hooper, but it's the same guy that made like Invaders from Mars. Yeah. Which is like a kid's movie, but it has like that movie kind of has like that never-ending story kind of props. A lot of people in like huge costumes and like kind of bumbling around. There's the main brain alien or whatever, which is really fucking cool looking. I don't care what anybody says, it's super cool. But it gives off a lot of vibes of like Never Ending Story 2. It has like those weird beetle monsters that you see in fucking Neverending Story 2, just kind of roaming around in the spaceship. It's such a cool movie. I just watched it the other day, and the first time since I was like fucking 9, and I watched it again just the other day, and I was like, man, this just makes me feel like a kid again. And that's why I love horror so much, because it makes me feel like a kid again.
Oh, absolutely. There's still magic there.
I try my best to like explain it to my wife. It's like, I have been watching this stuff since I was like 6 years old. Like 6 years old. Like the first time I saw a horror movie was Child's Play 3.
Okay.
And it never stopped for me.
Oh yeah, I mean it has mutated our DNA basically. Our first fucking riff and our first fucking kill, like at a young age. You either love it or hate it from that point forward. And if you love it, it's a long ride.
And that's why I devote so much time to it. Every year I do my huge playlist of movies, and I try to find new movies and try to find gems out of sometimes a big large thing of coal. Yeah. But
it's rough out here.
It's just what it is. Some people's creativity are not up to par with others, but you try to take something away from each movie. Yeah. But sometimes they're just like I just watched one the other day called what was it? It was called Chest.
Okay.
Like not even like the chest, but just chest.
Chest.
Yeah. And it had a really cool cover. And I was like, okay, I love movies that have really cool covers. And I popped that sucker on, and it looked like it was filmed by like 3 high schoolers.
Hell yeah.
And it was like a mockumentary kind of style thing. And like they were interviewing this dude who probably lived up in the Appalachians Mountains. And he was like talking about, my grandmommy, told me about this story of this chest down in this cave, man. You guys should go check it out. Whatever. I'm like, oh man. After that, I was just like, man, I got to turn this off. I don't know.
Well, and it's one of those things. One man's trash is another person's treasure. I always think that like every movie, there is someone that loves that movie. Like, yeah. I don't think there's obviously not me. I fucking hate obviously more movies than I like, but
like, I love low budget movies, and I love, the campy shit.
Yeah.
But, I love, the campy movies when they had some charm to them.
Correct.
Like nowadays,
that is a huge thing. That unattainable charm. Yeah, like it's really weird it's hard to explain that to someone. Like it doesn't have the charm. Prime example, not horror films, but the original Twister and the new Twister. Wife and I went and saw the new Twister when it came out and stuff like that.
Fuck me, dude.
And I knew what it was going to be, and I was like, okay, big Twisters, here we go. And it's like, yeah, it does what it does, but the original one just has this charm of its characters, and this.
You know what, man? What I have to say about the new Twisters movies is that they really didn't need all that country music.
No, they didn't. They didn't need the Budweiser can point now. No. I knew what I was in for. I knew away like what they were going for.
When in the first Twister movie, did anybody talk with a fucking hill jack accent?
No.
Was there one lick of a country song in that movie?
No.
Why?
Well, because they knew their clientele. Like that's what they were aiming for. They're like, we're gonna get the Bud Light drinking crowd to come out and see this film.
Listen, their clientele are the ones who want to be there to see the extreme.
Yeah, I wanted to see big Twisters. What I got was a Ford pickup commercial. With some Twisters.
It's just too bad that Mike, not Mike, but Bill Paxton is not alive anymore.
Yeah.
Fucking Philip Seymour Hoffman is not alive anymore to even like close to reprise those roles.
Yeah.
Honestly, throughout that whole movie, I was waiting for her to like show up at Helen Hunt's house and be like, "Hey, Mom."
Yeah, that's what we were all waiting for, and then it was the girl from Northern Exposure.
Like the whole time, I was like, "I see it coming. is coming, and then like some weird bitch opened the door, and I was like, "Who are you?"
You ain't Helen Hunt.
I thought you ain't Helen Hunt.
Where's Paul Reiser at? This ain't mad about you.
Like, what is it?
But for
such a disappointment.
Oh, big time. But we'll just kind of blister through. It's not possible to do this. Not possible to blister through this because
No.
late 70s. All right, here we go. Kiss comes out in 74. Iron Maiden comes out in 75. Dawn of the Dead comes out in 78. This isn't a metal band, but goddamn it, the Misfits, 78.
Oh man, yeah, the Misfits belong in this conversation.
100%.
They're all the way horror. Like they're drenched in horror. Like that's all their songs are about. It's like
100%.
Zombies ate my baby, and like fucking.
Mommy, can I go out and kill tonight?
Mommy, can I go out and kill tonight? And like, I remember, Gomez, when he had that fucking Misfits shirt in school, and it said, "Mommy, can I go out and kill tonight?" And I remember our English teacher saw it, and she was like, "I don't think you're allowed to wear that here." And Gomez was just like, "I don't care." Like he just turned around and walked out. And then like later on that day, I remember seeing him, and like she had stuck a piece of duct tape over the word "kill," and I was like, "Are you kidding me right now?"
So shocking. But that's the thing. They took their love of horror films, the theatrics of Alice Cooper, and just the punk DIY New Jersey fucking beefed out guy. The devil lock, the fucking blood covering them. Just go.
I would have loved to have the conversation when they were coming up with the devil lock look.
Just a pineapple that just goes for days.
Hey, you got any fucking goddamn fucking beeswax or something, man? I gotta put it in my hair.
Knowing Danzig, it was more than likely something he saw in a comic book and was like, "I'm going to do that," because I mean, that's basically comic books and horror films. That's just the Danzig story.
Yeah.
But then
the Misfits belong. Yeah, they belong in here.
The same year that the Misfits comes out, our first known to be the first American slasher, debatable. Some people consider Leatherface a slasher, and all that stuff. But 78 is when we get Halloween. And from that point forward, fucking horror films are forever changed.
Yeah. And I'll give Halloween his credit. It's not one of my favorite series. Halloween 1 is a cool film to pop on in the season.
Yep.
And just to enjoy. Halloween 3 is probably my favorite.
I was gonna say I like the first 3.
Halloween 3 is probably my favorite out of all of them. I'll say that with a wholehearted, wonderful. Fuck the rest. I didn't really care about the rest. Like 4, 5.
Oh, that's when
beyond. Like all of that didn't matter. Even like Halloween Kills was all right.
I like the opening scene.
Then you had Halloween Ends, and
didn't bother watching it.
Be glad
I know
you
about
didn't.
it, but yeah, like
Be glad you didn't. This whole like I'm gonna new blood this whole movie.
Yeah.
For some reason. Like, I'm going to literally take like the prospect of Friday the 13th New Blood, and I'm going to make it this movie.
Yep.
Why? Like, why? When you had fucking such a strong movie as Halloween Kills, and then you go into this really stupid tangent where apparently, Michael Myers was never really the thing. It was just the darkness.
Yeah.
The darkness. It's spreading. Like, why? Like, it didn't make any sense to me.
I don't know. It's one of those things where I don't know who's asking for that kind of stuff. Like, at the end of the day, people just want the dude in the mask to stab the people and That's it. Like, that's all.
That's what I want.
That's all anybody wants from Michael Myers. We don't need it to be a cult and all this stuff. Like, it doesn't need to be all these
it
things.
didn't make any sense to me.
It didn't make sense then. It doesn't make sense now.
The way that if you ever do want to see it, I don't want to spoil it for you.
You're fine.
But
I'm not going to watch it.
The way that Laurie dies in the movie is just, not Laurie. The way that Michael dies in the movie is just stupid.
Yeah.
It was so fast. And there was no big, like nothing. It was just like, oh, he's dead now. Guess what? He's the darkness. And he's going to possess some kid who has like a really bad time at catching girls. That's it.
That's it. But like, so yeah, this is also John Carpenter now, who is arguably one of, if not my favorite horror director. Not because of Halloween, but for films that come later. Mm-hmm. But also in this time, we also have the new wave of British heavy metal. You've got the bands of like Motorhead, Judas Priest.
Yes.
They're coming out like through the late 70s, early 80s. We get our first Friday the 13th, 1980. And they put out 8 films in the 80s, I believe it is, over the course of 10 years.
A lot of people will talk about like there were slasher movies before Friday the 13th, but they came up with the formula.
Correct.
Like,
it is what you think of.
Yeah, they came up with the formula that is known to make slasher movies. Like the way that they did it was so smart, and it was so it appealed to everybody. Even if it didn't, like if you don't like tits and ass, that's fine. But it appealed to everybody. Somebody was going to enjoy this movie.
Yeah, you got the kills, you got the levity at the
teenagers.
Yep, you got the levity at the beginning, you got the nudity, and then you got the bloodshed.
Yeah.
What else? Realistically, and it's usually like those movies, 90 minutes. In and
you
out.
know what? And you know what? One other thing is that in the 80s, they were the king of the twist.
Yeah.
Like when the first Friday the 13th, you thought the whole time it was Jason. You thought it was. And then like, nope, come find out it's his mom. Yep. She was pissed off at everybody to let her kid drown. Fuck y'all. I'm going to cut your heads off. Like, no, like nobody saw it coming. And like fucking Camp Sleepaway, like nobody saw that ending coming.
Yep.
Whatsoever. Like nobody saw that coming.
Like you don't get like when you're talking about like made the formula, you can follow that formula to like Scream and everything. Like
every one of them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because
and you talk about influences. Like you talk about influences, that's another huge influential movie because it created this whole other subgenre, just like, Black Sabbath when they created a whole other sound.
Yep.
And yeah, it's still one of my favorite like series to watch.
Oh, absolutely.
Honestly, I love Nightmare on Elm Street a little bit more than Friday 13th movies. But yeah, they're all great.
Oh yeah, fuck yeah. So that's 1980. 81. This is a very like super overlooked if you're not in the metal sphere. I'll just use super overlooked band, super overlooked album, but if you're in the know, you know. Venom's Welcome to Hell comes out in 1981. Now, Venom is one of the first major, I'm going to use that lightly, major acts to just full bore incorporate like satanic imagery, like whole hog satanic imagery, fast, aggressive music. From
needles, spikes, everywhere. Leather.
From this one band, you get a plethora of influence through thrash, through black metal, through everything. Everybody that did it before Venom gave Venom what they needed to just go like, this is like, okay, so Black Sabbath is the first metal band. Venom is the first metal band that was like, we're going to be a metal band. Like Black Sabbath,
we're gonna try to scare the shit out of people.
Yeah, like that, because like Black Sabbath they were a blues band that was just really heavy, really dark, and it's like that's what metal is. Venom had heard all that stuff and it was like, we're going to just up the ante, and that's like, again, horror and metal. Okay, I got my influences. How can I make it better? How can I make it faster, heavier, darker, whatever? And Venom was just like, hold my beer. We're gonna wait. No, don't hold that. I want that.
And you know, I can say I'm super proud that I got to play with Venom Inc. And meet those guys.
Yeah.
You know, they're such awesome dudes. Really nice people. Super down to earth and really funny. We shot the shit with them for like a couple hours when we played with them, and yeah, really cool people. And I'm so glad that I got to play with them. It's such like, it just makes me feel all giddy.
They're one of those bands too that like, I love the fact that like, for instance, like my mom and stuff, like growing up, you know, like listening to like Korn and stuff like in middle school and everything, and my mom's like, how can you listen to this evil stuff? To be like, when you were in high school, this was coming out. Like, this is 1981 Venom. This is not new. Like, this is what it is, you know?
Yeah, and you know, like my mom tries to have that argument with me a lot, and I'm like, listen, you guys were hippies. Like, you were the scourge of the conservative world. Yep. Okay? So I'm the scourge of your world right now.
It comes in tides,
it comes back to you.
Yep.
You know, and yeah, I was telling my brother the other day, because he's super religious now, and you know, he's really into that kind of stuff, which is fine.
Yeah, teach their own.
But I told him, I was like, you know, you're the first one that gave me a tape from Josh Poe, and you're like, I don't like this, you can have it though. And guess what that tape was?
Oh,
Once Upon the Cross.
Oh, okay, deicide.
Yeah,
I was like, what era are we talking? Okay,
yeah, when I heard that opening to that album, everything changed for me. I was like, I have never heard anything like this before. What is this? Like, Father, why have you forsaken me? Bum, 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 bum. I'm like, what?
Well, and it's one of those things, like at a young age, I can name a couple albums off the top of my head that I remember, like, because I was raised like in a Methodist household and stuff like that. I am, like, everyone that's listening to this podcast knows that I'm an atheist, but like I was raised, you know, like, oh, you know, God and the devil and all this stuff, right? I remember hearing The Downward Spiral by 9 Inch Nails at a very young age and getting to the song Heresy, which is just, God is dead and no one cares. If there is a hell, I'll see you there. And just being like, oh no, I've heard this and now I'm going to hell. Like, this idea of like that, like darkness and everything. And yeah, that's still to this day is one of my favorite albums of all time.
Yeah,
like,
I love that. I love that album. I love 9 Inch Nails. And but yeah, you know, and I told him, I was like, you were the first person to get me into death metal.
Yeah.
And you know, I was like, just chew on that for a little bit.
This is your fault.
But you know, and he used to love that stuff. Like, you know, we would listen to that stuff together. He was more into like the gangster rap though.
Oh hell yeah!
Like, he was huge on gangster rap, and I was too, because he was into it. And yeah, I still love gangster rap.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of rap
that I
like.
listen to a lot of 90s shit, and I love it. You know, the boom bap stuff, and like.
Well,
but,
there was an interesting side tangent that, like, in the late 80s, 90s, that you can touch on with like Gravediggers and stuff like that, where you're starting to get horror influence into rap and stuff like that.
I'm sorry, and I'm sorry, but I'm going to say this, but Insane Clown Posse.
Yeah. Oh, there's no, there's no shame here.
There's no shame.
No.
And I still listen to them to this day. I don't care what anybody says.
No.
Juggalos can be stupid all they want. That's fine.
Yeah.
But, you know, Insane Clown Posse brought horror into rap.
Yeah.
And they infused it in such a way where it's like, oh, you know, this stupid hick dad used to beat on his wife, and like he beats his kids up, and like this guy's a piece of shit scum. And like they talked about that stuff, and like, you know, talked about killing racist, and like called like, you know, called it chicken hunting and like all this other shit. And a lot of people give them so much shit.
Yeah.
And I don't understand it one bit, because like all of the people that talk about, you know, ending racism and ending, you know, all this, you know, madness.
Yeah.
There were ones out there like preaching that shit.
Yep.
They were like, yeah, fuck the Hicks, you know, fuck your rebel flag, and like,
oh yeah,
all this
I
other
think
shit.
that was like one of their first songs on their first album was "Fuck Your Rebel Flag."
Yeah, fuck your rebel flag. Like, you know, of course they talked about like Dead Body Man and like, you know, fucking I loved that stuff because it was horror infused. And you know, you also have like Bone Thugs, who also had like some horror infused songs as well. You know, really, really great, you know, like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, you know, then you had songs like Murder Is the Case That Gave Me, which has such a horror vibe to it.
Well, so,
you know,
so much of the, we're on a side tangent now of like gangster rap from the 90s. So much of the death row sound, like, is, I mean, in that same time, it goes full circle. They're like making it horror sounding, and then you get Tales from the Hood that's just taking, and it's just like an Ouroboros just eating its own tail, and it is this, because again, going back to what I said at the beginning, it's just people telling dark tales. That's it. At the end of the day, that's all it is. So like the reason I want to do this is for this conversation. Like, yeah, it is horror and it is metal, but it's fucking everything. You can even look at nowadays, you've got like folk singers like Amigo the Devil that's writing folk songs that are just horror based folk songs.
Well, dude, like even like really popular acts like today, like The Weeknd.
Yeah.
The Weeknd has a lot of like really fucked up songs, and you know, like his last record he did, where Jim Carrey like is throughout the album as like a radio host, like kind of leading you through like this limbo, or whatever. Like, now just sit back and chill to the easy sounds of blah 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 blah. It's such a good album though, because it's talking about, you know, leading you to death.
Okay.
Like the entire time. And, you know, there's like songs that talk about like him performing like autoerotic asphyxiation on people. You know, it's so creepy, but it's done in such a way where like it will feed to the masses. And I will say it now. I don't care what anybody says. The Weeknd is literally our generation's Michael Jackson.
Oh, damn.
Like, he's
you heard it here
doing
first,
it,
guys.
like, he's doing it in such a way that people are eating it up, but he also has that really like strong retro vibe to him that I really love.
I'm really hoping he doesn't take the Michael Jackson thing the whole 10 yards, though.
I do. Well, not
we got you on record, boy.
Not that. Okay. And I'm kind of in the group where Michael didn't do that stuff. You know,
I was talking about buying a chimp. That's what I was talking about. I was just talking about buying a chimp.
You got me again.
But yeah,
no,
so like
Michael didn't do that shit. I don't care what anybody says. Michael didn't do it. He was too good of a person, and he was a sweet guy. Fuck anybody that says that. I don't care what anybody says.
So Venom comes out, and we're gonna keep shot. Well, God, I can't. So next one, Merciful Fate. Melissa comes out right after.
Yes.
Like King Diamond in Merciful Fate. Like literally just
the first guy to do corpse paint.
Yeah,
like
literally like the just beyond theatrics. It is a stage horror show. It is the motherfuckers got a like crucifix made out of a femur and another bone, carrying a skull, singing songs about Satan, and like just literal just insanity. Like, I mean, when you listen to it right nowadays and stuff, you're like, oh, okay, just kind of like sounds like dark classic rock or whatever, right? But like 1983, guys, like you gotta think this band was around for a few years prior, swinging around in Europe, fucking scaring the fuck out of everybody. You got this dude in a top hat, white face paint, like all sorts of craziness.
You also can't forget Meatloaf.
Oh yeah,
and his like I don't know how to explain it. Like when he came out with "Bad Out of Hell,"
yeah,
it was.
I didn't forget about that. Yeah,
yeah, it was like a big. It was like a play production.
It's literally a rock opera.
It's a rock opera. Yeah, and you know, when I saw that album cover for the first time, my dad had it. I was like, whoa, it's like this album was really fucking cool. And then I put the CD in and it's like, I would do anything for love. I'm like,
but the motorcycle.
This is really good.
Yeah.
I was like, but this is really good. But this is not what the album cover is saying. But this is really good.
Yeah. I remember seeing the cover for Bad Out of Hell 2, that one. And then right underneath it was my dad's cassette of Quiet Riot's Mental Health. And that cover scared the ever-living hell out of me as a kid. I was like, no, this is, I can't listen to this. My God. But 1983, though, Thrash has entered the chat. Metallica puts out Kill 'Em All.
Yeah.
Fucking
everybody knows Kill 'Em All.
Yep.
Everybody does.
Slayer puts out Show No Mercy in 1983. So now Thrash is here.
Yeah.
So the 80s is just slashers and thrashers, and then later on in the 80s, you start getting death metal, but we're not there yet.
Yep.
Bathory comes out in 1984. Self-titled album.
Fuck. Like, God damn it. I love Bathory. Yeah. I mean, like, thrash, like, is a huge thing for, like, horror-infused music.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, we wouldn't have, like, bands like we have today. Like, you know, we wouldn't have, like, the Ghouls, and we wouldn't have, like, Frightmare without Metallica,
two
without
of my
Slayer.
Favorites. Yeah.
You know, thrash was a huge like kicker for infusing horror into music.
Well, that's the reason I brought up like the Misfits, because like without that you don't like that crossoverness of like the hardcore punk and everything, and that's where you get this stuff. Like it's very important to bring up the past to understand where we're at. Right,
exactly. Yeah, and like when I saw the title on Ride the Lightning with Call of Cthulhu,
yeah,
and I was just like, what? I was like, what is that? I was like, what is a Cthulhu? And it was, of course, it was spelled all weird.
Yes.
And I was just
what is Cthulhu?
What is Cthulhu?
And that's going back to Lovecraft, and which is like one of. I feel bad that we didn't do like a big deep dive on Lovecraft, but we'll do that eventually on some films that we cover that are Lovecraft based. But it's so fucking crazy. We have Bathory. So then we're also in 84. We get the first Nightmare on Elm Street. Possessed Seven Churches comes out in 85. Return of the Living Dead in 85. Motherfucking Reanimator 85. My boy.
Yes. Yes. The only man who can do a Lovecraft movie and actually make it good, like really good. Like I still give him so much praise for like his renditions of the Lovecraft movies.
Oh yeah, Stuart Gordon.
Yes. Like he knocked all of those out of the park. I don't care what anybody says. Some of them were a little campy. Some of them were a little weird. But
back to back, Reanimator story, and From Beyond, like that's insane.
From Beyond is like one of my favorite Lovecraft inspired movies. Like it's one of my favorites because it's so fucking out of control. It's absurd.
From the word go.
Yeah, it's absurd. And that's the only way that you can do Lovecraft, is to make everything absolutely absurd, make it unconventional, make it like something that's completely unfathomable that could happen.
It's got to be basically like the pulp magazines it came out of that were titled like weird stories. It has to fit that bill. It's got to be weird.
Yeah.
So 86 we get Trick or Treat, which fucking literally a metal horror film.
Yes.
1986, it's happened, baby. We have, I believe, Gene Simmons is in this. Ozzy Osbourne is in this, I believe. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but yeah, like, so 86 is like full-fledged, like they're like, got some chocolate in my peanut butter, like it's full on.
Yeah, and what a great movie. I love that movie so much. And yes, it is one of the first movies where they combined the two things that we are talking about together and made something spectacular.
Oh yeah, and they still do it to this day. Like, you get films like Deathgasm and things like that. Like, it's just like metal horror is like its own subgenre. It's weird. Yeah. But like after Trick or Treat comes out, now you're starting to get soundtracks with metal bands and rock bands giving songs to them. So you've got like Friday the 13th Part 6. You've got an Alice Cooper song brought into it. You've got Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dokken. Like, you're just getting all this stuff that's in there. And then 1987 is basically the beginning rumblings of a new genre of metal. We've got an album called Seasons of the Dead by Necrophagia.
Yes! Necrophagia is one of my favorite bands of all time. And
Ohio boys.
Yes, and having met Killjoy and having such a wonderful time with him, talking to him, and having I will tell you this story on this podcast because it's funny as fuck. Okay. We saw Necrophagia in Cleveland. They were doing like this really one-off show with like this Suno kind of worship band called, I can't even remember what their name was. They weren't bad. But yeah, during that show, before Necrophagia was going to go on, it was during the band before them, I go into the bathroom and I go up to the urinal and I start taking a piss. And then Killjoy comes in. Now, if anybody doesn't know, Killjoy is literally like 3'9". Like, this guy is short as fuck. He is so small. And he walks up to the baby urinal next to me. And he's like, they don't make these things for short people, do they? And I just started dying laughing. And he's like, it's ridiculous, man. Like, I literally have to stand on my goddamn tippy toes to fucking take a piss in this thing. I was like, here's one of my heroes going on about how he can't barely piss in a fucking baby urinal. I was just like, what is going on?
This is a simulation. It's official now.
But, we got out of the bathroom and we were just shooting the shit. And I was just like, man, your band changed everything for me. Like, your band influenced me in so many ways that you can't even imagine. And he's like, thank you. He's like, yeah, that's really awesome, dude. And he even gave me like a free shirt, which was nice. Really cool. I was like, thank you. I was like, that's really cool of you. Yeah, great set though. They did Cannibal Holocaust. They did like, some of the Holocausto de la Muerte stuff, which I will get into in a little bit. But yeah.
Oh yeah, man.
Fucking love Necrophagia.
So we've got death metal now. death metal, like previously I brought up Possessed. They get brought up as being possibly one of the first ones to write a death metal song. But not a death metal album. No. And Necrophagia is just like, this is what we're doing. So 87, we've got the Lost Boys, which is another, like, it's just drenched in fucking like 80s hair metal kind of feel and everything.
A lot of pop culture in that movie. A lot of like the 80s style, like the hairdos and the leather jackets.
Oh yeah.
And, like
Kiefer Sutherland is the most attractive man that's ever walked this earth in that movie. I am on record saying it.
Fantastic actor. Yeah, I love him.
Also, though, 1987 Scream Bloody Gore by Death comes out. And this is where death metal kind of gets its title from, in a way. Black Roses in 88. Gwar's first album, Hello, comes out in 88. Which a lot of people forget that Hello predates Scumdogs and everything, but Hello comes out, and you've been talking about some of the bands that you got to play with. I got to play with Gwar many years ago while Brocky was still alive, and it was surreal. And if you don't know who Gwar is literally a band of space alien monsters from a different planet that play metal.
Yeah.
That's it. Just look them up online. YouTube them.
They're literal alien crackheads.
Yeah.
That came to this earth and to enslave the human race.
Yeah. But they accidentally landed in Antarctica, and they tried to enslave the penguins, and it didn't go well. But it's one of those things where it's like, it's still horror, it's comedy, it's just fart jokes, it's all this stuff, all these things that are just fucking great, and it's just in bad taste in the best way possible.
Right. Gwar, I've seen Gwar twice, and that was both times with Dave, and both were fantastic shows.
Yeah, fucking great.
One of the best shows I've ever seen. Not the best band in the world, but one of the greatest. Probably shows.
One of the most fun bands in the world. Like, yes. You cannot describe. You don't even have to like their music. If you like horror and you see Gwar's coming to town, fuck it. Even though
you go.
Dave Brocky passed away and everything, they've got a new vocalist. Whatever, it's going to be.
He's not even new though. He was old beefcake.
Yeah. But like, it's still just going to be an absolute gore-drenched shit show. in all the best ways.
Yeah, when I saw Gwar those two times, they were both on Halloween.
Oh, nice.
Which was so fitting.
Yeah.
Both were fantastic shows. They ended, I think the second time I went to go see them, they ended with the Long Road Ahead.
Okay.
And he was jizzing all over the crowd the entire song. And it was hilarious.
And if you don't know who Gwar is, Odorous Arungus, the leader of the band, has a massive dick called the Cuttlefish of Love. I believe that's what it's called, right? And
it's called the Cuttlefish.
Yeah. And it's fucking massive. It actually ended up getting taken away from him by the police at some point, and he had to get a new one made. But yeah, he then shoots white liquid all over the, like, you leave a Gwar show covered like you literally got tie-dyed. It's insane.
Yeah. It sprayed many different colors. There was some blues and some greens and some reds in there.
Yep.
I remember the one that I went to go see. I think it was before that one, where they decapitated Michael Jackson. And they cut Barack Obama's face off in the second one I went to. It was so funny.
Oh yeah, I saw when I played with them and everything. Yeah, Obama got thrown into like a meat grinder. Fucking, what was it? It was like literally every president that had been around since Reagan. Reagan got fucking like a crucifix shoved up his ass, and then a nun came out and cut his head off. It was just insanity. Like, it literally is just insanity.
What was really cool, the second time that I saw them, they did Crack in the Egg, and then they led it directly into Gorgor, and Gorgor came out, and I was like, oh yes, I fucking love this. I love Gorgor.
But so that's Gwar. Then we get Obituary, Slowly We Rot in 89. We get Morbid Angel, Altars of Madness in 89. And like death metal is like in full speed now. You still got thrash and everything going on, but Cannibal Corpse, Eaten Back to Life 1990. It just pushes it to a whole new level. Love them or hate them. It just is so much more extreme. Like
exactly.
in the purest sense. Extreme.
Yeah, and Eaten Back to Life is a great album, and it's so punky.
Yeah,
and like it's like thrash but on steroids. And you know, a lot of people like equate to Cannibal Corpse and how they sound now to what their style was. Like, no, like Eaten Back to Life was like I said, thrash on steroids. It was something else. And then their sound just evolved over time, and they got the Bleeding, where they had the super mid-scooped guitar sound. Yep. And Cannibal Corpse is like one of the greats.
You're either gonna love them or hate them. Like I'm not sure if there's a middle ground. I don't know many people that are like, all right. And I'm not saying like loving them like you're their biggest fan, but it's just like, they fucking rule, man. Like, I got to I've seen Cannibal Corpse once. I got to talk to George, Corpse Grinder, and everything, and it was just fucking mental. Like, what they do like with surgical precision. They are fucking masters of the craft. And like you said earlier, their songs are literally just, I'm not a filmmaker, but I like splattery films. How can I make a splattery film? I'm going to write the splattery film, and then you're going to do your just most intense vocal delivery ever, and then we're just going to make some of the most intense, like, meth-fueled riffage. It's the only way I can describe it sometimes, because it's so chaotic. It feels like it's about to fall off the edge of a cliff. It just has that swelling, and that's what they do. And they've done it for fucking ever now.
So, love Cannibal Corpse.
And then the 90s is a kind of a weird time for horror. This is what we were talking about earlier, where like horror becomes a bad word almost. You're just getting like, you know, the 50th installment of Jason and everything. Candyman comes out in 92, Leprechaun in 93. Then the band Dark Throne puts out an album called A Blaze in the Northern Sky in 92. And this is where black metal starts showing up. Now, black metal is a very divisive subgenre because of some of its political leanings for some bands and everything. And we are not a political podcast, so we're not going to go down that.
About any of that.
We're not going to go down that rabbit hole. Just putting that out there now. So Dark Throne comes out, and it's just fucking punk D beats, blast beats, fucking bar chords, and atmosphere. Like, that's the biggest thing that black metal brings to the table, is what we talked about in some of the soundtracks and everything and the scores of films. Black metal brings this atmosphere to it. Now, in the initial startings, that atmosphere is just really lo-fi production. But as they go on, their intention is this atmosphere, this coldness, this, you know, all these different things that they like to say.
Yeah, man. Black metal. That was another game changer. And, you know, you talk about, game changer moments in music, like punk was in the 80s, and how thrash was in the 80s. And, you know, then you had, you know, we're getting into the area where grunge was starting to come in too. Yeah. You know, but black metal was a game changer, and black metal at that time when it came out was scaring the fuck out of everybody.
Scared everyone.
Yeah. And, you know, just like the antics that, you know, Euronymous and Varg were getting into with the church burnings in Norway and everything, everybody was taking these guys super seriously, and these guys were taking themselves super seriously. You know, you have multiple murders in black metal scene. You know, you have crimes that are actually committed in the black metal scene,
Yes.
and like murders and fucking church burnings, vandalism, and these guys.
Lots of bad shit. Like,
Yeah, these guys were. When you talked about Venom upping the ante as far as like a stage show, these guys were upping the ante as far as their personalities were and how they really wanted to present themselves to these people.
to use the wrestling line, they were living the gimmick.
Yeah.
Like, they straight up were like, no, we are evil. Like, that was like their intention. Like, that's what they wanted to be. Like, you know, if the Christian church is this, then we are that. Like, we are, and it makes
like
sense.
they took I'm sorry to interrupt you,
You're
but
fine.
they took everything from like the first wave of black metal,
Bathory,
and-
Venom,
yeah,
things of that.
Bathory and Venom and all that, and they said, fuck that. They're like, no, these guys are just posing
Yeah.
as like, you know, these evil people. We're gonna actually like go out and do this shit.
Yeah.
And
I love-
we're talking about.
And when it comes to like their production and stuff, the thing that I think is really funny about it is like it's so lo-fi, and they have many of these people, Isan from Emperor and stuff. A lot of their influences and stuff post Bathory and Venom were a lot of these death metal bands, and they would say like, oh, they sold out because like the production was just a little bit better, and like it's mind-blowing to think that when you hear like Eaten Back to Life, and it's like they sold out. It's like, we're gonna what the fuck are you talking about? But it goes with the build, I guess.
The
But
aesthetic, you know,
Yeah,
it's black metal changed a lot.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the death metal bands didn't want to give them credit for what they were doing.
yeah,
Which later on we obviously know was like death metal bands obviously can't live now without black metal.
100%.
Because, you know, there's so many black and death bands out now.
Yep.
And black metal infused so much music that's coming out today. Like so much. Like you have like the dissonant death metal stuff that's coming out now.
Oh, yeah.
That's all harkened back to like black metal.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, it's created a new generation of music, and it's one of those things that I don't think will ever be forgotten.
No, it definitely has left the charred remains throughout history. But this is where we can kind of blister through a little bit, because now we've hit black metal. In my opinion, it's the last like important point, because we're gonna touch on some stuff a little later. But so you've got that, you got Dark Throne comes out. In the Mouth of Madness, one of the best John Carpenter films. I can't believe that I forgot to mention it back in the 80s, but my favorite John Carpenter film, The Thing.
Yeah.
I don't know how it's not on the list, but I guess it was
Thing.
yeah.
Yeah,
The
the
80s
Thing was ahead
list-
of its time.
Yeah, my list for the 80s was like thick, and we barely touched half of it. But
Yeah.
In the Mouth of Madness comes out. Marilyn Manson's Portrait of American Family 1994 comes out, which now we're just taking the Alice Cooper idea and just being like
And you're injecting a shitload of heroin into it.
Yeah, it's so fucking like, again, we're not a political podcast, not talking about anything, but like his influence on shock and awe and everything cannot be denied. Korn's self-titled debut comes out in 94. Mayhem's first album, and I butcher the name of this fucking album every time, De Mysterious Dom Sathanas. I believe we're close.
That's pretty close. Yeah.
1994, which is Mayhem. Mayhem is what most people think of when they think black metal, is the sound of mayhem.
And another band that I'm proud that I got to play with.
Yeah.
It's so fucking good. It was so fucking good. Like when they opened the show, it was pure darkness for like a minute, and then they opened with Freezing Moon, and I was just like, just like, yes. And Attila through that whole fucking show was amazing.
And if you're not familiar with these bands, there's going to be a playlist that you'll be able to listen to, so you can understand like all of our like, oh my god, when it's like this, it's like, yeah, we're not doing the best job, but you can at least have an audio journey with it. But the same year that came out, because I've never been a Crazy Mayhem fan. Like, I appreciate them for what they are. But 94 gave me my favorite black metal band, and that's Emperor in the Nightside Eclipse. That's where...
But... And also, and this is another one that a lot of people don't know about. 1994 is when Portal came about, too.
Yes, yeah.
And that band was one of the first bands to take death metal and black metal and smash them together and turn them into noise.
Yeah, it's insane. Like, we'll at the end of this episode, we're going to kind of give a quick, like, 5 album suggestions of, like, what we think are the best. And I have a big feeling that we're both going to bring them up.
Yeah, because with Portal, that changed everything for me. I was getting kind of stagnant on death metal for a while, and I was like, man, nothing's really getting to me anymore. Everything just sounded the same, and everything just sounded like, kind of like formulaic. And then I hear Outra, and I'm like
it literally.
This is what death metal should sound like.
I'm pushing 40. And the album Swarth that came later, still to this day, is scary sounding. Like, they are able to produce sounds.
Like, they are able to create horror. Yeah, they are able to create horror in audio form.
Yeah.
And they take it to much darker realms than, say, like with Metallica.
Yeah.
Or, say like with Venom and, bands like that. They took it to a whole other world.
They took it literally into the abyss.
Yeah. Yeah. 1994, that band was also active. And, it's really weird that they were active around the same time that, Mayhem was dropping their first record. And, all these other black metal bands were just starting to come up. And it's like, it's so weird to think that band was brewing.
Yep.
While these guys were doing this. It's like, we weren't ready.
Well, going back to Black Sabbath. So, like, when that film comes out, I believe it was 63. They were toying around with stuff. They were fucking around, and that's 7 years before their first album came out. That's where they got the idea. Like, so this stuff, like, I've only got the names of like first releases and stuff. So it's like, this is when the general public finally sees these things. But yeah, these people are working on this stuff for a long fucking time before it ever sees the light of day. But after that, then, Scream comes out in 96. And from that point forward, it's basically just Scream knockoffs,
Oh my gosh.
Let's
put it this way. If your movie was mentioned in any of the scary movies, your movie was probably really bad.
Yeah.
And it was funny. And it was easy to make fun of. But, I'm not going to say I wasn't a fan of Scream.
I was Scream.
Definitely I was definitely a fan of Scream 1 and 2.
Yeah.
The rest can
100%
fall off into the abyss. I don't fucking care.
But it's one of those things though, like horror for the early 90s was not like I was saying, it's thrillers and all this stuff, and like Scream brought it back in a way, like to the popular pop culture, like bringing it back to the front to get more people to start digging into those later films.
Yeah, and then you had like movies that were like coming out that were sequels to like movies earlier that in the 80s that were coming out, like Children of the Corn 3.
Yeah,
like that movie is insane.
Is that the one with the briefcase full of corn?
Yeah, like the monster at the end of that movie is fucking nuts, and there's so much blood at the end of that movie, so much gore everywhere. It was such a fantastic movie, and they had the kid from Demonic Toys in it, who played fucking Eli. who nailed that character, by the way. Fucking fantastic. I think 3 is my favorite one out of the others, because like 1 is okay, 2 was like or whatever, and then 3 came out and it was a whole different ball game. I was just like, there is so much blood and gore. Like this lady just like tripped and fell over, and she like landed on a pipe on the back of her head, and she's spouting out blood out of her mouth.
She exploded.
Like it's so great. Like to this day, I still watch that movie, and I'm still like in so much like it's so much fun. Like I have so much fun with that movie. It's so great.
But like I said, this is where it's, I know what you did last summer, urban legends. Blair Witch Project comes out in 99.
And that was a game changer.
That was a huge game changer. The found footage genre, which granted, there was stuff prior to that did it, but nobody did it on the stage that the Blair Witch Project did.
Yeah, nobody did it in that way.
Yeah,
we'll say that, because the way that they changed the horror genre is that now anybody can pick up a shitty camera and you can try to make a movie.
Yep.
And I love found footage because in its hearts of hearts, it's basically an art form that the little guy can get into.
Yeah.
And the little guy can do.
Very low bar to
you don't
entry.
You don't have to have a lot of money to put something together like that. Blair Witch Project, they spent a lot of money on their advertising.
Yeah.
And their PR.
Well, and they did
the way they advertised that movie was like, this is real.
They did the cannibal Holocaust thing.
Yeah, this happened to these people. They went missing and they'd never been heard from before, and this is their footage.
Yep. I just rewatched that within the last month because I hadn't seen it in a long time, and it's still really fucking effective. Like it's
really good. It was the first to create that genre. It's not my favorite.
No.
But it's really well done to create it's kind of like being in the woods by yourself and you don't know what to do, and you have all this anxiety like, oh, we'll never find our way out of here, and like all that just kept building and building and building. Just to the paranoia.
End. Yeah, the paranoia of it, the isolation of it.
And single-handedly, that movie has the best shot in any found footage movie I've ever seen, which is the end when the camera falls and you see the dude in the corner.
Yep, perfectly framed drop too.
Yeah, wonderful shot.
Super.
And I look for found footage movies that kind of give you like that kind of feeling like I had when I saw the end of that movie.
Yeah,
and there's some great gems out there.
Yeah.
And they do it effectively, like Poughkeepsie tapes. And there's
super
also
creepy.
One that was just titled Found Footage that was based out of Australia about a serial killer and his day-to-day life. And I just love the more grainy it is and the more icky it feels. The more
rooted in reality is that's where it becomes more effective to me. Like my favorite, it's found footage, but then it also goes it's obviously set as like a documentary and stuff, is Lake Mungo. I don't know if you've seen that. Like that is like, that one's super effective and it's so good. But so yeah, you
also had the really fucked up series of movies that were found footage, which was the August Underground films.
Oh yeah, those are super fucked. going back to Poe, that was my introduction to those.
Oh man. Yeah, like the first time I watched Mortem, I felt so overwhelmed.
Yeah,
I had to shut it off for after the first 30 minutes, and then I continued, and I was like, this just doesn't get any better. Like this keeps getting worse. Like I have never seen a movie like this before. Like you have like them like coaxing this guy to cut his own dick off, and I'm like, they're like, yeah, just fucking do it, and like they just keep yelling at him over and over. It's like sensory overload.
Yeah,
and they're just like, just fucking do it, just do it. Cut your dick off, and like the guy finally does it, and they all start laughing, and it's like, this is so fucked. Or like, I'm like, what? But yeah, it feels like it's improbable, but it feels like reality.
Yeah,
when you're watching this,
the way it's staged and the film grain, all that stuff, like especially when you're talking about like found footage, you feel like you're looking through the camera, and it's very, very unsettling. Even if it doesn't, like the narrative doesn't get you, it's undeniable that like just the way that those are shot, like work. Like I mean, the VHS series is full of that kind of stuff. And
yeah, and Fred Vogel, who was the director of those films, took the term torture porn and took it to a whole different level.
Yeah.
And and
kind of going back to like the whole idea of like Cannibal Corpse being like, no, we are a death metal band and stuff like that. He was like, no, I am a torture porn director. Like
it was nuts. And he did a few other films that were kind of like along the lines of that, but they were actually like feature films. Yeah. And then he did one like kind of artsy fartsy movie, which I have. It's okay. It's about a vet that like comes back and he's not right or whatever, and he was one of those directors that I kept an eye on because he was willing to break like those barriers, and like show people like there could be these kind of people out here. There could be like this like fucked up group of kids out there maybe doing this to people, and like
just
it's really interesting.
Literally making film like, because the purpose is like not always, but like with certain directors, certain art forms, the point is to shock and awe. Like I can't believe I saw that. Like that whole idea of like that, what the fuck, and now it's opening a whole new door to you. It's crazy.
Yeah. Those movies, especially Mortem. Mortem is like a hard pill to swallow, and it's like fuck, man. And it has Killjoy in it for like the last maybe 20 minutes of the movie, which is really cool.
So that's the 90s. There is one last thing in the 90s that matters when it comes to horror and metal, specifically because of theatrics and stuff, is Slipknot's self-titled debut comes out in 99, and then the 2000s and stuff, like when it comes to horror and metal, you just start getting your metal soundtracks. Mudvayne's on the Ghost Ship soundtrack, Dillinger Escape Plans on Underworld, Static X is on the Queen of the Damned soundtrack. The Queen of the Damned soundtrack is just a metal soundtrack, and you just start,
it's all Korn and Static X.
Dracula 2000s just full, and that's what it just became. It was just like literally just like wearing it on their sleeves. So like it's a marriage made in hell. Like it's like it just, and there's like Ben and I have very specific things that draw us to metal and horror films, but there's a color for every person. Like there's a flavor for every person. Like you've got like we mentioned like Ghost and things of that nature. Like I know like this just came up in the popular talk and whatnot. Like we've got Terrifier 3 coming out, and the band Ice Nine Kills is having a song on it. Not my style of music, but I know a lot of people that like this band, and they are a horror themed like metalcore band. So like more power to you. That's fucking cool. Like do your thing. Like it might not be for me, but it's obviously for others.
Honestly, I wish that they would have stuck with like the whole synthwave vibe and like the dark wave kind of vibe, because that's what I love so much about like the first one was kind of like the dark wave soundtrack to it. It just made you feel like you were in the 80s again, watching a dirty slasher. And
with that, we're gonna give you guys kind of a rapid fire 5 albums for us that like is a perfect encapsulation of like horror and metal for us, and maybe it'll be something that you guys like. So I'll start it off because you're talking about watching a dirty VHS tape of a slasher, and I'm gonna say Bring Back the Bloodshed by Frightmare. I fucking love that album to this day, and it starts with the Vestron intro that comes on when you pop in a Vestron fucking tape and kicks in. It's just, it literally, each song is like Sleepaway Camp and Friday the 13th Part 2 and all, like, it just literally, hey, my name's Maniac Neil. I'm gonna write these fucking riffs. I'm gonna fucking write these songs that are basically just horror films that I like. Just, there we go. And it fucking is great.
Yeah. Yeah, which is funny because that's on my list.
There you go.
Yeah, that was number 4 for me. And I think my number 5 was Mondo Medical by Impaled.
I've got them on my list as well.
Well, it's so iconic because like these are bands like around the time when we were growing up that were doing like these horror based metal albums. Yeah. Frightmare, Impaled, Ghoul, all of those like rehashed like thrash and grind bands that were doing like these horror themed albums were just so fantastic. I love them. So
we got Frightmare. You said Impaled. Which album of theirs?
Mondo Medical.
All right. Yeah, mine is Death After Life, which is literally like a Reanimator album. It's just straight up like fucking great.
Number 3 for me is Portal Ultra, because that album, like I said, it changed everything I thought about what death metal could be. And it's terrifying. I explained it to somebody like it's like an album that tries to literally strangle you.
Yeah.
In denseness, like it's so dense and so much atmosphere, and the unconventional instrumentation throughout the whole record is so unsettling. The vocals are so unsettling.
Yes.
Like they're one of the most terrifying bands, if not one of the most terrifying bands of all time.
Yeah,
I think
crazy.
They took everything that people love about Lovecraft, and they took it and made their own world.
Yeah,
which is kind of what I'm trying to do with Venomous Echoes. Like I'm trying to create like my own like world and saga, almost kind of. That one needs to be on there.
Oh yeah. See, mine, my Portal album, I'm suggesting you check out, isn't even my favorite Portal album. My favorite's Swarth. But the one that I'm going to suggest is, I think, the easiest one to get into, and that's Vexavoid.
Vexavoid is their most like critically acclaimed one. Yeah.
And it's so like from the get-go, it is just like, oh, okay, this is what's going on, and then it just fucking goes wild. Like, it's just like but it's so percussive, it's so like in your face in a way that is unmatched. Like just the opening of that album is just and it's hypnotic and just kind of lulls you into this like dread. It's weird. It's really hard to explain.
Their single from that record, Curtain, is terrifying.
Fucking horrifying. Just
like
just fucking
like one of the most terrifying opening riffs to any song I've ever heard. And then they had a video to go with it to boot, and I'm like,
that was based on The Hypnotic Worm by Edgar Allan Poe, I believe.
Yeah.
Fucking crazy shit. But yeah, so Portal Vexavoid is going to be mine. Let's see here. I don't have mine actually in order, but I'll drop this one real quick. This band was very important to me for a long time. They're very, this is probably the most popular band. Yeah, this is 100% the most popular band on my list. The Black Dahlia Murders album, Nocturnal.
Yeah.
That fucking album is just pulp horror story after pulp horror story with melodic fucking guitar licks, amazing drumming, R.I.P. Papa Trev, some of the best fucking vocals, like, personally, that's ever been put on a metal album.
Yeah.
Black Dahlia Murder Nocturnal is, like, untouchable when it comes to, like, that is a perfect, like, oh, you want to hear some, like, horror-esque metal? Here you go. That would be the first album I would give somebody. That has no idea, really. I
agree. And, I really love Black Dahlia Murder. And, I love Trevor. And he was such an awesome dude. And I'm so sorry that it's so sad that he's gone.
Yes.
But, I agree. Yeah, and like a lot of his writings were just either horror or they were horror adjacent.
Yep.
I definitely can agree with that one for sure. My next one that I had was Ultimo Mondo Cannibal from Impetigo.
Yep.
Like you can't have like this discussion without mentioning this album, because it is straight up just like an homage to Italian horror and the cannibal movies that were so huge back in the 70s and everything. Love that record. It's so gnarly, and so they're one of the bands that like a lot of people seem to forget, but they deserve to be in the list for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And kind of bouncing off that, where you're like, can't have a list without them. Motherfucking Mortician. Chainsaw Dismemberment.
Yes, you can't. Because
you cannot.
They love horror more than their own music.
Yeah.
Because the fucking the samples and everything that they use are longer than the songs themselves.
You want to watch a horror film? Then just listen to their album, because it's more than likely going to be mostly just audio clips, and then just the gnarliest, thickest, grindiest bass tone ever. Just fucking disgusting vocals, and just a drum machine that will just pummel you into the fucking ground. And yeah, man, I was like struggling back and forth with them being my number 3 in Portal, and I was like, man, I don't know. So and then I ended up going with Portal, and I was like, but yeah, Mortician are fantastic. I love that band. Hell yeah. You got any more?
My number 1.
There you go.
And this will be my number 1 forever as far as a horror-themed death metal record. And that is Holocausto de la Muerte by Necrophagia.
Nice.
And that is because, I didn't find out about Fulci until I found Necrophagia.
Oh, really?
And, when I found Necrophagia, I was like, what is all this? What movies are these from? And like Josh was like, you never seen a Fulci movie? I was like, no. He's like, dude, you have to watch The Beyond. And I was like,
yeah.
Okay. I watched the Beyond, and ever since then, I was just like in love with Fulci.
Yeah.
I've seen most of his movies. One of my favorites, Cat in the Brain, which is such a weird, deviant, and odd movie.
That was one of his last ones, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, it stars him in the movie, and it goes through like his deviant thoughts, and like it's such a fucking weird movie. It kind of gives you like the vibes that the New York Ripper gives you.
Oh yeah,
like just that feeling.
Yep, that
totally
gritty.
Different movie, but it's dirty. Like it's so, and the gore and everything is so good. But yeah, the Beyond. that was like that changed everything, like for me, like going down a rabbit hole.
Oh yeah.
As far as horror goes, and yeah, I had to put Holocausto de la Muerte as number one on my list because I love Killjoy, I love Necrophagia, and I fucking love Fulci.
There you go, man. And I do have one honorable mention. I cannot, in good conscience, not mention this band because he has given me the rights to use his music on this podcast. And that's the band Seven Doors, which is taken from Fulci. His album, Feast of the Repulsive Dead, is a fucking one-man death metal banger. Fucking top to bottom. So we've got fucking the opening track to our podcast is I'll Swallow Your Soul, which is an Evil Dead homage. Like, it's fucking great. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. It's fucking.
Which is funny because like my copy of the Beyond was one of the $5 bin ones, and it's actually called Seven Doors of Hell.
Yep.
It's funny that you mentioned that.
Yep. So I couldn't in good conscience not bring them up. But so thank you, Ben, for coming onto the podcast and helping me try to traverse this fucking insane fucking tapestry that is horror and metal.
Yeah, no problem, dude. I really enjoyed it.
Oh yeah.
I always love to discuss music, and I always love to discuss horror movies. So anytime that somebody brings that up to me, I'm like, fuck yeah. I could go on for days.
So where can the people find you?
So you can find my project Venomous Echoes on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter. You can find me on all the socials, basically. Also look up I Void Hanger Records, where you can purchase my LP and also CD. You can find my previous album, Writing Tomb Amongst the Stars, on Vargeist Records as well. My current album, Split Formations and Infinite Mania, is out now. Check out I Void Hanger Records and get your copy. I got a lot of different music. My third record for Venomous Echoes is done, and it's in the production stage now, where they have to like get like the artwork and everything together for it. I'm really excited about that one.
Oh yeah, man.
Probably my most vulnerable record I've ever done. So you can definitely keep an eye out for that one for next year.
Oh yeah.
And my other projects, Wallow, you can find me on Bandcamp. I just started actually doing some stuff under the moniker Disvoid again.
Oh shit! I played with Disvoid way back in the day.
You played with us a while ago. I just started writing stuff for it. It's not even like the same thing. I still kept the chainsaw guitar tone, so I went with that and made it like kind of like a weirdo death grind kind of thing.
Nice.
So that's coming soon. I'm currently writing a full length for that. You can find me on Darkest Fears podcast with my buddy Mike. Check us out, give us a like and subscribe on YouTube. That's the only place where we're at currently. We haven't moved to anything else like Twitch or anything yet, but like I said, we're really small. We just do it for fun. We've taken a bit of a break because I just had surgery done and it's just recovering. I think we're going to record an episode actually this weekend on True Detective season 1.
Oh God. Oh my God. That's literally probably my favorite season of television ever.
Yeah, because it doesn't get any better than that.
It's so fucking good.
It doesn't get any better. When I finished that season for the first time, I was just like, this was not a true crime. This was like a horror TV show.
Yeah.
And Matthew McConaughey and fucking Woody Harrelson
oh my God,
kill it.
So
they
good.
Kill it. Yeah.
Like that
but
season
yeah, we'll
ended.
be talking about that one.
That season ended. I was like, all right, TV, you're done. You can't do anything better than that. So. All right. Well, for Pot of the Dead, I am Nicholas, and Ben, thank you for coming. Next week we'll be covering Critters. I know that we told you that on the last episode, so this
Love Critters.
This was Pot of the Dead Gaiden. Oh wait, no. Come back or else.